Mexico have warned against easing the journey to the United States. In Peru, the indefinite international strike of the country's health sector continues. Rescue efforts continue in Indonesia after a 6.2 magnitude earthquake struck Sulawesi Island just after midnight Friday. From the headquarters of teleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm Gladys Quesada. The migrant... The migrant caravan gets crowded in Honduras. On Friday morning, more than 3,000 people gathered at the San Pedro Sula bus station to begin their journey to the United States amidst chants against President Juan Orlando Hernández. The forecast numbers on the amount of people have been surpassed. Authorities estimated that the 200 migrants who left on Wednesday night will be joined by another 400 on Thursday, for a total of 2,500 on Sunday. On Friday morning, more than 3,000 people prepare to begin their journey to the United States, despite warnings from Guatemala and Mexico, whose governments have already said they will not ease the caravan's movement through its territories. The U.S., in alliance with the governments of Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras, signed an agreement that criminalizes thousands of Central American citizens who are victims of violence, hunger, poverty, and exclusion. In Honduras, the political and social crisis deepens. This Thursday, 3 opposition deputies asked Parliament to impeach President Juan Orlando Hernández following accusations of alleged links to drug trafficking made in the U.S. courts. Deputies Luis Redondo, Jorge Calix, and David Armando Reyes filed a formal request to trial Hernández. Legislators demand that the corresponding procedures be carried out within the framework of the Constitution for different charges related to the drug trafficking. Although the Honduran president has not been formally charged by any national or international court, New York prosecutors claim that Hernández was involved in drug trafficking to the United States. Mexican authorities deployed an operation on the southern border of the country to prevent the imminent arrival of a new migrant caravan from Honduras. Local sources in the southern state of Chiapas reported that the National Institute of Migration placed at least 500 officials on the banks of the Suchiate River on the border with Guatemala. The move aims to prevent the entry of new migrants. The Secretariat of Foreign Affairs issued a statement noting that the Mexican government does not promote nor will allow the entry of migrant caravans into the country. It says the statement urges people to legalize their migratory status and enter the North American country legally. The latest migrant caravan left from San Pedro Sula in Honduras and is planning to cross Guatemala and Mexico with the hope of entering the United States. And human rights and migration will be major issues for the new U.S. government. This Thursday, part of the President-elect Joe Biden's team met with representatives of the Mexican government to specifically address these issues. Authorities and representatives of both parties agreed to address the causes that promote migration. During the meeting, they explained the need and importance of making the economy grow between Central and North America, which will have an impact on reducing migratory flows. This encounter is a follow-up to the first meeting held between Mexico and the United States on January 6. At the request of the government of Costa Rica, this Friday begins an open consultation process before the World Trade Organization for alleged restrictions imposed by Panamanian entities. The Deputy Minister of Foreign Trade of Costa Rica, Duainer Salas, said his country hopes to have a constructive dialogue to resolve the obstacles in the affected commercial relationship between the two Central American nations. Last August, the Costa Rican government notified the WTO of what it considers a blockade that Panama is exercising on the entrance of Costa Rican products. Panama justifies the measures based on its food security or due to procedures not completed by the neighboring country to renew the required export permits. Starting today, the governments will have 60 days of talks in search of a solution. If an agreement is not reached, a process that could take years will begin. And the government of Cuba rejected the repeated coercive measures of the United States against the island and described these sanctions as unjust when implemented against other countries. Havana considers that the measures against the country are implemented with high political motivation by Washington. The executive rejected the imposition of new controls by Trump's administration for the alleged export of certain technologies and activities to countries that allegedly support terrorism. The inclusion of Cuba as a country that sponsors terrorism sparked a wide international rejection, and messages from support from regional blocs arrived to the island. The President of Argentina, Alberto Fernandez, officially promulgated the law on the voluntary interruption of pregnancy this Thursday, as well as the law of comprehensive care during pregnancy and for children in the first years of life. Both bills, approved on December the 30th after an intense debate in the Argentine Senate, were officially signed into law in an official ceremony at the presidential palace. The law on the voluntary interruption of pregnancy will guarantee free, legal abortion in the public health system and eliminates legislation that dates from 1921, which criminalized women for undergoing an abortion. The second law is linked to the provision of comprehensive health care for children up to the age of 3 and includes, among other measures, the fulfillment of a plan of mandatory vaccinations linked to the National Health Program. It also provides care to the pregnant women and financial support in the first 1,000 days of an infant's life. Argentine President Alberto Fernandez signed the voluntary interruption of pregnancy law this Thursday, the final step in the legalization of abortion in the country, after it was passed the Senate on December the 30th, representing a huge victory for women's rights.
This is the culmination of a period of struggle. For many years, they fought to stop abortion from being a crime, which forced many women to have illegal abortions and to expose themselves to the risk of doing so. Today, we are definitely making a better society. Today, we are giving more freedom to women and more capacity to decide for women. It sounds like they are just words, but it is a huge step. A huge step.
And we'll go now to a short break. Follow us on Twitter at teleSUR English and Gladys teleSUR. Welcome back to From the South. In Peru, the third day of the indefinite national strike of the health sector advances after not receiving answers to their demands from the government. On the third consecutive day of strike, the health sector federations and unions reported that the union members will mobilize at the National Congress to demand the increase of the sector's budget to 6% of the GDP. The professionals of the state system also denounced that the state has not complied with the contractual commitments and also work conditions established between the union and the government between 2015 and 2017. Doctors ratified that they will continue working in essential areas such as emergency, hospitalization, intensive care units, and other due to pandemic. In Brazil, the health system of the Amazonian city of Manaus collapsed amidst a drastic increase of COVID-19 infections and fatalities, as well as shortages of oxygen in the city's hospitals. Our correspondent Brian Meir has the details.
Brazilians looked on in horror yesterday as a series of smartphone videos viralized on the social media networks showing the ICU wards in Manaus, a metropolitan region of around 2 million located in the middle of the Amazon jungle, had run out of oxygen. This is the second time since the beginning of the COVID-19 crisis that the hospital system in this city has entered into collapse. To make things worse, Brazil is undergoing a severe series of distribution crises due to mismanagement by the Bolsonaro government. The neighboring state of Amapá has run out of electricity, and recently the health minister announced that they don't have enough syringes to start rolling out vaccines. After the oxygen shortage became public, it also became public that the government doesn't have enough oxygen even to get to the city of Manaus to help out with the hospitals there. So as far-right President Jair Bolsonaro asked the United States for help, Oscar Ariaza, the foreign affairs minister of Venezuela, offered oxygen from Venezuela to Manaus, and the governor of Amazonas accepted it. This is embarrassing for Bolsonaro, especially since the United States hasn't really given a firm answer yet. Bolsonaro has not been very favorable to Joe Biden. He hasn't even accepted the Biden victory yet. Today, his son Eduardo changed his Twitter profile photo to a photo of Donald Trump. And the fact of the matter is it doesn't look like the Trump administration cares that much right now about Brazil or sending oxygen down here. Meanwhile, the Brazilian Air Force has started evacuating patients from Manaus to other neighboring states. Brazilians looked on.
The government of Venezuela paid tribute to Iranian General Qasem Soleimani. The ceremonies were held as part of the events for the first anniversary of his death. The ceremony was held in the Simón Bolívar Pantheon, where remains of the father of the homeland rest. The acts in tribute to the commander of the Quds Force of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard groups were presided by Caracas Mayor Erika Farias and the head of the Capital District, Jacqueline Faria. The ambassador of the Islamic Republic of Iran to Venezuela, Oyatollah Soltani, was also present. The formal acts included a floral offering to Simón Bolívar and the presentation of the Waraira Ripano order to the Iranian ambassador. And Iran's ambassador to Venezuela expressed moving words for recognition during the tribute to the commander of the Quds Force of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps.
Nowadays, the empire, through its cultural, economic and political influence, wants to do the same that the empires of the 19th century did with slaves. They want to dominate countries and peoples. As in past centuries, the liberators, among them the best known Simón Bolívar, who fought to bring down these chains. Today, in the 21st century, there are other fighters who have followed their struggles.
The Norwegian Medicines Agency announced this Thursday that 23 elderly people had died after receiving the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine against COVID-19. In response, the country's health authorities have changed recommendations for vaccinating the elderly with this vaccine. The agency noted that all deaths were recorded among people over the age of 80 and with weak immunity. An agency spokesperson highlighted that these cases are not alarming, as it is clear that this vaccine has a very small risk factor, with few exceptions when it comes to elderly patients who suffer from poor health, adding that the usual side effects could contribute to a more serious course of disease in the elderly. Vaccination against the coronavirus began in Norway with the Pfizer vaccine on December the 20th, and residents of nursing homes in Oslo received the first vaccinations. The Medicines Agency is also investigating 13 of the deaths. Sweden registers more than 10,000 COVID-19 related fatalities, as officials warn the numbers are expected to continue rising. One quarter of those deaths occurred in the past 30 days. Nordic countries have rejected full-on mandatory lockdowns, having instead put in place tight limitations on gatherings and certain activities. In Sweden, the issue is both legal and political, as no law exists that will allow the government to restrict people's mobility. To this date, the country registers nearly 520,000 COVID-19 cases. On Thursday, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan received the Sinovac COVID-19 vaccine in a bid to set an example and encourage others to do so. Speaking to reporters before leaving the hospital where he was given the shot, the president called on other political leaders and legislators to get inoculated and set an example to the population. Turkey rolled out its vaccination program against COVID-19 on Thursday, a day after regulatory authorities gave the green light for a Chinese-made emergency use. Some 256,000 healthcare workers received the vaccine on the first day of the program. President Erdogan also said he expected a Turkish-developed vaccine to be available in May.
Unfortunately, there are those that are pursuing negative campaigns, but I believe that my nation has good sensibility and will never give these the opportunity. My nation, following the light of science and understanding, will give the best answer with this vaccine, especially in this period with the cursed coronavirus. We, as a state, will do everything that we can. We will mobilize all the means we have available to us. God willing, after these 3 million vaccines, 30 million more are on the way. We will complete this with 250 million that are coming from China. Thus, whatever we need, we will continue our struggle by meeting this need quickly. None of these steps are mandatory. All of this is based on volunteering.
And we have more news coming up after a final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back. Rescue efforts continue in Indonesia after a 6.2 magnitude earthquake shook Sulawesi Island just after midnight Friday. The quake toppled homes and buildings, triggered landslides, and killed at least 42 people. The Indonesian Disaster Agency said that more than 600 people were injured. The agency also reported that at least 300 houses and a health clinic were damaged. Over 15,000 people are being housed in temporary shelters. Power and phones are down in many areas. Authorities are still collecting information about the full scale of casualties and the damage in the affected areas. United Nations officials on Friday said the Indonesian city of Marina had been heavily damaged after an earthquake shook the one country's islands just after midnight.
Been reported in the city of Medina, including at the 5-story Mitra Manakara hospital, where 8 people were reportedly trapped inside. The governor's office, 2 hotels, a mall, a community health center, and over 300 houses also sustained damages, according to the reports that we have. National authorities have so far mobilized 4 helicopters, tents and mattresses, special kits for children and the elderly, food and medical assistance, including orthopedic and psychosocial support.
And talks between the Indian government and representatives of tens of thousands of protesting farmers remained deadlocked Friday, with the government refusing to scrap new agricultural reform laws, which the farmers said will benefit large corporations. Both sides agreed to resume talks on January 19th. This is the 9th round of discussions over the long-running dispute without reaching any firm conclusions. Protesting farmers have demanded rollback of the laws and said the legislation passed by the parliament in September will lead to the cartelization and commercialization of agriculture, make farmers vulnerable to corporate greed, and devastate their earnings. On Tuesday, India's Supreme Court temporarily put on hold the implementation of agricultural reform laws and ordered the creation of an independent committee of experts to negotiate with the farmers who have been protesting against the legislation.
In today's meeting, we discussed the same issues, repealing the black laws, but the government is just not relenting. We repeated that they should repeal the laws, but the government is stuck on it. Next meeting is on the 19th of January, and in that meeting, we will ensure that they repeal the laws. We will win and go. There is another meeting again on the 19th. We have told them that there will be talks on 2 issues only. 1, the government should take back the 3 laws and make a law guaranteeing MSP. The talks will be on these 2 issues. If they accept, it's fine. Otherwise, we will not go for another round of talks.
The Ministry of Foreign Affairs spokesperson Zhao Lijian said Friday members of an expert team of World Health Organization began a mandatory quarantine in Wuhan before carrying out joint research on the origin of COVID-19.
After consultation between the 2 sides, the Chinese government had agreed that the WHO would send experts to China on January 14th to exchange ideas with Chinese counterparts on science-based cooperation in novel coronavirus origin tracing. 13 members of the WHO expert team arrived in Wuhan at noon yesterday and were arranged to stay in a quarantine hotel. China's remote coronavirus test requirement is based on the current international epidemic situation and refers to the practices of many countries. The purpose is to ensure the personal exchanges in an orderly manner between China and foreign countries by adopting epidemic control and prevention measures as the premise. This is not only to safeguard the hard-won achievements in the epidemic prevention and control efforts in China, but also to minimize the risk of cross-infection on their way to China for the sake of the health and safety of all people.
An Iran Islamic Revolution warship airspace force launched maneuvers in Persian Central Desert on Friday to test a new generation of weapon systems. This is the first phase of the so-called Great Prophet operation. Using a new generation of missiles and drones, the Iranian forces have carried out combined attacks against the hypothetical enemy base and destroying all the designated targets. After drone attacks against alleged enemy missile shield, the new generation of Zulfikar, Sehal and Deadful class missiles have dealt heavy blows to their targets in the exercise. The Iranian armored force disarming massive projectiles on the ground along with unmanned aircraft operations. And Uganda's Electoral Commission said Friday that President Yoweri Museveni led in Thursday's election based on results from roughly a third of polling stations. Museveni currently leads the race with 65% of the ballots, while top opposition candidate Bobi Wine has 27%. Final results are expected Saturday afternoon. Wine alleged that the vote in the East African country was rigged. The Electoral Commission said the burden is on him to prove his allegation. Internet access remained cut after the government ordered it Wednesday evening, but the Electoral Commission asserted that it will have no effect on the process. Museveni has led Uganda since 1986 and still has support among some in Uganda from bringing stability. A new COVID-19 strain was reported in the Republic of Kenya. The new strain may be spreading without patients showing any symptoms of the disease. Kenya's Medical Research Institute carried out an investigation that shows that this new COVID-19 strain has not been observed anywhere else in the world. With this new finding, a total of 20 coronavirus strains have been identified so far, none of them linked to those found in Brazil, Japan or the United Kingdom. To this date, Kenya has a downward trend in the number of infections, registering nearly 99,000 COVID-19 cases and more than 1,700 fatalities. And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For Telesur English, I'm Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.